Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Asatara Satya Sri Śrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shri Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai Mathura Dhama Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai Gangamaya Jamuna Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatyade Sitarane. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Vanchakapachubhischa Kripa Sindhi Pajapatitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhi Namo Namo Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's April 25th, 2025 at Radha Govinda Mandir in Brooklyn, New York. And we're reading from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8. Dhruva Maharaj leaves home from the forest, text 1. Is that the verse that's up on the board? Maitreya Uvacha. Sanakadya Naradascha. Riburhamso Renur Yati. Naite Grihan Brahma Sutta. Yavasan Urdhvaretasa. Please chant. Maitreya Uvacha. Sanakadya Naradascha. Naite Grihan Brahma Sutta. Yavasan Urdhvaretasa. Maitreya Uvacha. Sanakadya Naradascha. Uti. Burhamso Runiryati. Nete Grihan Brahma Sutta. Yavasan Urdhvaretasa. Any ladies? Maitreya Uvacha. Yavasan Urdhvaretasa. Maitreya Uvacha. Maitreya said, Sanaka Adyaha. Those headed by Sanaka. Naradaha. Narada. Cha. And Ribuhu. Ribu. Hamsaha. Hamsa. Arunihi. Aruni. Yatihi. Yati. Na. Not. Ete. All these. Grihan. At home. Brahmasutaha. Sons of Brahma. He. Certainly. Avasan. Did live. Urdhvaretasaha. Unadulterated celibates. Srila Prabhupada's translation. The great sage Maitreya said that 4 great Kumara sages headed by Sanaka as well as Narada, Ribu, Hamsa, Aruni, and Yati, all sons of Brahma, did not live at home, but became Urdhvareta or Nastiki brahmacharis, unadulterated celibates. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The system of brahmacharya has been current since the birth of Brahma. A section of the population, especially male, did not marry at all. Instead of allowing their semen to be driven downwards, they used to lift the semen up to the brain. They are called Urdhvaretasaha. Urdhva means literally going up. Those who lift up. Semen is so important that if, by the yogic process, one can lift the semen up to the brain, he can perform wonderful work. One's memory is enabled to act very swiftly, and the duration of life is increased. Yogis can thus perform all kinds of austerity with steadiness and be elevated to the highest perfectional stage, even to the spiritual world. Vivid examples of brahmacharis who accepted this principle of life are the four sages Sanaka, Sanananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara, as well as Narada and others. Another significant phrase here is Naiti Grihan Yavasan. They did not live at home. Griha means home as well as wife. In fact, home means wife. Home does not mean a room or a house. One who lives with a wife lives at home. Otherwise, a sannyasi or brahmachari, even though he may live in a room or a house, does not live at home. So this is important. Prabhupada's using what we call hermeneutics here, because the literal translation is they did not live at home. So he's then explaining that this doesn't mean that they didn't have a roof. That they did not live at home means that they did not accept a wife, and so there was no question of their discharging semen. Now that's a radical statement in 2025. Yes? Semen is meant to be discharged when one has a home, a wife, and the intention to beget children. Otherwise, there is no injunction for discharging semen. These principles were followed from the beginning of creation, and such brahmacharis never created progeny. This narration has dealt with the descendants of Lord Brahma from Manu's daughter, Basuti. Basuti's daughter was Dakshayani, or Sati, in relation to whom the story of the Daksha Yagya was narrated. Maitreya is now explaining about the progeny of the sons of Brahma. Out of the many sons of Brahma, the brahmachari sons headed by Sanaka and Narada did not marry at all, and therefore there is no question of narrating the history of their descendants. Maitreya Uvacha Sanakadya Naradascha Ribuhamsor Rinuryatihi Naiti Grihan Brahma Sutta Ya Veshan Udvarejasa. The great sage Maitreya said, the four great Kumara sages headed by Sanaka, as well as Narada, Ribu, Hamsa, Aruni, and Yati, all sons of Brahma, did not live at home, but became Urdhvareta or Nastiki brahmacharis, unadulterated celibates. So when I read this, I was reminded of a class I gave in New Zealand a very long time ago, probably 2007, 2008, on Bhāgavatam 5:25:5. And I remember when I was preparing for that class, I was feeling a little nervous about speaking on this subject. And gradually, devotees kind of encouraged me to do more research and more details on it. And so I'd kind of like to bring that here to this verse. So this verse 5:25:5 in the purport, the verse is about how the daughters of the snakes are worshiping Balaram in the form of Ananta, and they're massaging his feet. And Prabhupada writes, when males and females touch each other's bodies, their lusty desires naturally awaken. It appears from this verse that there are similar sensations in spiritual bodies. Both Lord Ananta and the women giving him pleasure had spiritual bodies. Thus, all sensations originally exist in the spiritual body. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadyasya Yataha, Bhāgavatam 1:1:1. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has commented in this connection that the word adi means adiras, the original lusty feeling, which is born from the Supreme. However, spiritual lust and material lust are as completely different as day and night. Good, gold and iron, excellent. Only one who is highly elevated in spiritual realization can understand the lusty feelings exchanged between Radha and Krishna, or between Krishna and the damsels of Vraja. Therefore, unless one is very experienced and advanced in spiritual realization, he is forbidden to discuss the lusty feelings of Krishna and the gopis. However, if one is a sincere and pure devotee, the material lust in his heart is completely vanquished as he discusses the lusty feelings between the gopis and Krishna, and he makes quick progress in spiritual life. So it's very interesting, these lifetime celibates who are called brahmacharis, and we should just make a little note that there is a distinction between living in the brahmachari ashram in terms of varn ashram and being a lifetime brahmachari. The brahmachari ashram is a school. It's meant really for children and teenagers. And some people stay in school their whole life. Just like even nowadays, I'm sure we all know of somebody who collects degrees. Yes, do you know people like that? They never leave school. They never even become a teacher. They just stay in school. So traditionally, there were some people who stayed in the brahmachari ashram. Some of those persons would become like assistants to a sannyasi or something like that. And in most of our temples, we have a few people like that, both male and female. People who just do menial service in the temple and don't really take any big responsibility in the mission. So someone who stays celibate their whole life, it says in the 7th canto that the brahmachari can go from the brahmachari ashram to the grihastha ashram or to the vanaprastha ashram or to the sannyas ashram. So we have a number of devotees in our Hare Krishna movement, and historically speaking as well, they never marry, which euphemistically here is said that they didn't live at home. But they take as much or more responsibility as a grihastha, and they have as much or more independence as a grihastha. Like Prabhupada talks about how there's increasing independence going through the ashramas. So we have people in our movement, and again, historically, who've never married, but they have projects that they arrange the financing for. And they're not like just working someone who's telling them when to eat and when to sleep and what their schedule is. You understand what I'm saying? Yes? They're developing their own preaching platforms and becoming very powerful people in the mission. And that's going to be an important point as we go through this verse. So all of us conditioned souls are disturbed by sexual energy. Yes? Anybody here want to say they have never had any disturbance from sexual energy? Okay. It's just part of being a conditioned soul. Right? I remember telling my children when they got to be 12, you're going to start feeling attraction to the opposite sex, and unless you're liberated or diseased, that's normal. That doesn't mean that you're a demon. It's just part of having a physical body. So many times people have the idea that spiritual life means to kill this energy. But you don't find that the personalities described, is it still up there or no? You don't find the personalities that are described in today's verse were killing that energy. What were they doing with it? They were transforming it. They were taking it physiologically to another part of the body, and they were transforming it, but they were not killing it, and they were not repressing it. So why can we not kill and repress this? Maybe some of us have tried. You don't need to raise your hands, but I'm sure some of us have tried to kill this or repress it. And when we look at this verse from 525:5, why can't we kill or repress it? Because it's actually part of the spiritual body. The original energy is part of the spiritual body. Prabhupada says you can't kill desire. You just can't kill. That's an impersonalistic idea that I'm going to kill desire. I'm going to stop being a person. So the first thing to understand is that this energy is originally a spiritual energy, and it has a spiritual use. But then we're going to look at the fact that this energy gets twisted. It gets messed up in conditioned life and with a material body. And how are we going to use that energy? So again, these celibates, they're not killing the energy. We don't have any story of anyone who tries to kill, or anyone who's successful. We have a number of stories of people who are unsuccessful at repression. Can you think of some stories of people in the Shastra who were unsuccessful at repression? Vishwamitra is always the example given. The Vishwamitra, he was very, very determined. Right? Vishwamitra was a Kshatriya, and he ended up being a guest at the home of Vishwamitra Muni. Vishwamitra Muni had a Kamadhenu. He had this cow that could give you whatever you wanted, like literally whatever you wanted. And so when Vishwamitra Muni, when Vishwamitra, but he wasn't Muni yet. When Vishwamitra came with his army, Vasistha said, well, I can take care of your whole army. He said, you're just this brahmana living out in the forest. How are you going to take care of my army? And Vasistha said, oh, I have a Kamadhenu. And the cow provided food and everything for everyone. And then Vishvamitra became envious. And he said, I want that cow. Now, this is against Kshatriya principles. You don't take something from a brahmana. And so he starts leading the cow away, and she's crying. Right? And Vasishtha's like, I'm sorry, I can't really protect you. I'm not a warrior. So she produced armies coming out of her body that attacked Vishvamitra. Then Vishvamitra was hurling weapons at Vasishtha, and Vasishtha just took up his Brahmin staff and held it in the air, and all these subtle weapons came out of it and decimated Vishvamitra. So Vishvamitra thought, ha! They're more powerful, I want their power. His whole motive was like that. And he thought, I'm going to become a brahmana so I can get these subtle weapons. So he's doing all this meditation, and then Indra always gets nervous about people getting power. You know, he's always thinking they want to be Indra, which was actually not Vishvamita's mood at all. So he sends Menaka. And Vishvamita's meditating underwater, and he just hears the jangling of Menaka's jewelry. And from that, he thinks, oh, it must be a woman. And he just loses everything, lives with her for years, and produces Shakuntala, who's also a very important personality in the Bhāgavatam. And then he's like very determined. All right, I'm definitely not going to get overcome by sexual desire again. No way. I'm just going to kill the whole thing. And so he does more meditation and more austerities, and then Indra sends another heavenly damsel, Ramba. And then Vishvamitra gets overcome by anger. Anger is called the younger brother of lust. And then did he turn her to stone or ashes? I can't remember. Anybody remember? Anyway, one of the two. And then again, he lost all of his power and had to start his austerities all over again. So when we try to repress this energy, because it's actually part of the soul, we can't do it. When we try to repress it, there are several things that happen. One, we can have a fall down. And that's what happened with Vishvamitra. He had a fall down. And we actually see this happen in our Hare Krishna movement. We see people who try to repress, and then they end up having some ugly scandal. Yes? Everybody knows of something like that. Or else they become angry. Right? Have you ever met people like that? They're like always angry. Right? So it usually goes in one of those two directions. If you try to repress, it reasserts itself in some way. Can you think of another example of someone who tried to repress? So Bari Muni, yeah. Of course, in his case, his problem was Vaishnava Aparad, which weakened him. But he was also trying to repress. And he saw some fish copulating, like, I mean, I don't know. There's everything now in 2025, but I don't know. Is there like a fish pornography channel or something? I don't know. But, you know, he became totally overwhelmed. And not only did he get married, how many women did he marry? 50! Hare Krishna. I mean, the story has a happy ending. He goes back to Godhead, and all 50 wives go back to Godhead with him, but, you know. So we have these examples of these people who try to repress, and we have these historical examples in Shastra, and we have these examples in our own movement. Right? I mean, when I used to live at the old Brooklyn Temple back in 1975, and I remember people giving class who were at that time sannyasis, but didn't stay sannyasis, and their whole classes was always about how all the women were terrible and all the grahastas were terrible. That was the entire class from beginning to end. And being at that time a married woman with a young baby, I would go home and cry after class all the time. So you can't kill it. What the energy is an energy that exists in Krishna as the Adiras, and it also exists in all jivas because we're part of Krishna. This is so nicely explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially in Madhya 8, 138. So how does the jiva naturally experience this pleasure in a spiritual body? And you can say, all right, well, we know, the gopis have a relationship with Krishna, the queens have a relationship with Krishna, But what about everybody else? What about the flowers and the bumblebees and the cows and the cowherd boys? So I'd like you to think for a minute about Hanuman. Hanuman is the perfect example of a jiva who uses this energy spiritually. What does he do? He unites Sita with Ram, right? He opens his heart and he shows there is Sita and Ram. So the way this works is that this energy is the Lord's pleasure energy. It's the Lord's Ladini Shakti. And when the Lord is brought together with his Ladini Shakti, the jivas that are connected with the Lord also enjoy. Krishna Das Kaviraj says this Ladini Shakti gives pleasure to the Lord and also nourishes all of the jivas. So as soon as the jiva acts to bring together the Lord and his energy of pleasure, the jiva also enjoys this original pleasure, which is it's pleasure, it's life, right? If we think of what is this, it's producing life. Yes, it's producing connection. So all of that energy, that's how it's meant to be enjoyed. Krishna is not envious. An envious person wants to have something that no one else has, or wants to have more of it at least. They either, bless you, they either want no one else to have it or someone else to have less of it. So it's not that Radha Govinda are enjoying and everyone else is just supposed to be like some sort of roboton, you know. He's not a despot. He's not a dictator that's trying to suck out everyone else's energy for his own pleasure. But rather, Krishna wants to distribute his pleasure to everyone. That's his happiness. We have a little idea of that in this world, how we feel happier cooking for others than just eating for ourselves. Yes? I always give the example that Christmas is based on the fact, the whole celebration, the whole commercialization of Christmas is based on the fact that people enjoy giving gifts more than buying something for themselves. If the store said, spend all your Christmas money on buying what you want, it wouldn't work, right? So Krishna is also this giver. Such a nice, Srila Bhakti Saraswati explains that Anandam Buddhivardhanam in the Shikshastaka means that there's an unlimited ocean of pleasure, and that even though the jiva is finite, when the jiva is connected with Krishna, they can also enjoy unlimited pleasure. And Prabhupada will explain this as trying to enjoy through Krishna. We think of the analogies given all the time about putting food in the stomach, and it nourishes the whole body. Or I give the example, like I have a cup of water and it's slightly warm, which is really nice. Thank you, whoever did this. So my hand is taking this cup of water and putting the water in my mouth. That water will then go through my digestive system into the veins of my body and get distributed to my hands. Right? If I didn't drink enough water, my hands would be dry. Correct? Yes? Now let's say I were to take my hand and put it in the water. What would happen to my hand? It would actually dry up, wouldn't it? If you kept your hand, we've all had this experience, right? You keep your hand in water for too long, it starts looking like a raisin, and it actually starts to dry up. My hand can't drink water directly. If my hand wants to be moist, it has to put water in the stomach. So we become nourished and we become happy by making Krishna happy. When we say, work for the pleasure of Krishna, try to please Krishna, what that literally means ontologically is that we want to unite Krishna with his energy of pleasure. I mean, in one sense, they're always united, they're always together. But still, the jiva wants to act as this catalyst, whether it's Sitaram or Lakshmi Narayan or Radha and Krishna. And of course, this is what happens when we chant Hare Krishna. I remember explaining this once in Slovakia, and a devotee said how it always bothered him, the separation of Ram and Sita, and he realized that now if he chants Hare Ram, he can bring Ram and Sita together in his mouth. So this is the original energy of the Lord and the soul, and that's how it's meant to be enjoyed. When it's enjoyed like that, the jiva is completely satisfied. And that is not the same as killing it. Can you see the distinction? All right, so what happens as conditioned souls is that instead of being like Hanuman, we become like who? Ravana. We're thinking, all right, I'm happy by bringing together Radha and Krishna, or Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan. The pleasures coming from Lakshmi Devi, from Radharani, from Sita. Why do I have to go through Krishna? Let me just become the owner of the energy myself. I'm enjoying it through Krishna, almost as if I am Krishna. There's a Chinta Beta Beta Tattva. We also have a oneness with Krishna. I'm enjoying this energy through Krishna. Why do I need Krishna? Let me just enjoy it. I mean, think of it in a normal family. So the children are enjoying so many things. The parents are earning money, and with that money, they're also feeding and clothing the children, right? Taking them to music lessons and school and arranging their friends and their toys. And the children might think, why do I have to get this through my parents? Let me just get it directly. Right? I remember my oldest grandson, when he was like 6 or 7, said to my son, why do you get to be the daddy? Why can't I be the daddy? Why can't I make all the decisions? So it's like that. We're thinking, let me enjoy this myself. Let me steal Sita away from Ram and make her mine. But that doesn't work. It doesn't work any more than we can make our hand moist by submersing it in water. That's not how we're meant to enjoy that pleasure. So we get a material body, we get a material mind. Krishna's extremely kind. I mean, the scope of Krishna's kindness just amazes me. First of all, on the spiritual level, he wants to infinitely share all of his enjoyment with all living entities. He wants all the jivas to experience the pleasures that he's experiencing. He has zero envy. And even materially, for a materially contaminated, rebellious soul, you want to steal my consort and enjoy her personally. He doesn't say, as many religions claim, okay, well then go to hell and just burn in hell forever, you rebellious soul, you. Or even, just to stay in some sort of state of suspended animation, which we do in the body of Mahavishnu. Okay, just like be in some never, ever existence. He says, I will give you an illusory world where you can imagine that you are doing, in illusion, what you cannot do in reality. You can't do it. It doesn't work. It's not a possible thing to do. But I'll let you imagine that you are doing it. And you can imagine you're doing it in all different species. And this goes on differently in different species, by the way. Like anything you can imagine, there's some species that can do that in terms of their sexual behavior. There's species that don't need a male, by the way. There's lizards that can produce with just females. And there's species like seahorses. The father carries the eggs around in his pouch. Whatever you can imagine, it's there. Yeah, there's some species. You want to enjoy like this? Okay, here, this thing. Have this one dream after another, after another, after another. Is it working, folks? Are we unlimitedly happy? Is it working? In fact, the perversion of this desire causes so much trouble. I don't know if I should say this or not. Who's the most dangerous person to a woman? What person represents the most danger to a woman? What man? Her husband or boyfriend. A woman's much more likely to be hurt or killed by her husband or boyfriend than anybody else. 55% of all murders are between intimate partners or somebody related to them, maybe like your brother-in-law or something like that. If we think about scandals, they're almost all about sex or money or a combination of the two, correct? Right? It's just this devastating energy it's very, very difficult to use it in a way that doesn't cause suffering. It's just extremely difficult. But Krishna says, go ahead. And also Krishna is very, very intelligent, that he connects reproduction to sex. I mean, he didn't have to, going back to Vishvamrita. Vishvamrita was able to make children grow on trees. And Lord Brahma said, no, that's not the way we want it done. But the fact that children is connected to sex in the natural order of things means that immediately there's dharma involved. You understand? There has to be some dharma. And the way the psychology works, are men more attracted to women or are women more attracted to men? Men are much more attracted to women, like by a huge order of magnitude. But the women's psychology is, wait a minute. I'm the one who's going to have to get pregnant and have the baby. Are you okay? Like a man is just, it's a woman. That's enough, And the woman is like, do you have a job? Are you responsible? Because they're thinking someone's got to take care of me. So the woman is going to say, of course, modern society, they've really messed things up. But naturally, biologically, the woman is going to say, hey, buddy, dharma. And in every society, it's the women of society that insist on the culture and the ordinary dharma. Prabhupada says women almost always, not today, but that women almost always outnumber men in religious ceremonies. So it's the woman who says, hey, buddy, again, 25 people have really messed up biology, but the woman usually says, hey, buddy, we have to get married, and you have to be responsible. Prabhupada talked about how when he was growing up that most people wouldn't hire a single man. Today that's illegal. But they knew that only a married man was actually going to be responsible. And who are the most irresponsible people in society? Young, unmarried men. You all know that, right? They're the most likely to cause car accidents, to commit crimes. Like what would happen to most of the nightlife in New York if people got married early and had babies early? A lot of it would just disappear. Am I correct? So Krishna links sex with dharma naturally. If we follow the natural biology, he's like, all right, you want to be rebellious? Okay, fine, I'll give you this illusory world, this dream world, where you can pretend that you have this enjoyment. And I'll let you have some enjoyment, but I'm going to link it with dharma. I'm going to link it with dharma. All right, well then there are some people who say, all right, well, I'm going to do like the people in today's verse, who are going to say, I'm going to link that with dharma in another way. I'm going to voluntarily link this energy with dharma without being involved with the opposite sex and children and home and things of that nature. And Prabhupada said this kind of renunciation is not a narrowing, it's not a hatred, it's a widening. So the ordinary married man, he's saying, oh, I'm going to be responsible for a wife, I'm going to be responsible for children, I'm going to be responsible for money, I'm going to be responsible for a home. But those who say, well, I'm going to be a lifetime renunciate, except for the few who stay in the brahmachari ashram as a menial servant, I'm going to take responsibility for the world. I'm going to see the world as my family. The same care, the same work, the same responsibility as an ordinary man would do for a family, I'm going to do for the world. You can see we have people like this in our Hare Krishna movement. We have people who in their 30s and 40s even, they take some big responsibility, right? They're traveling, they're preaching, they're publishing books, they're starting centers, they're starting different things, and they're putting out as much or more energy as an ordinary grahasta does in his work. They're taking that energy and bringing it up and giving it out to the world. Everybody should take responsibility. A few people can stay childlike their whole life. That's always going to be some people like that. but most people should take responsibilities. So that's what we want to do, whether we're sadhakas or siddhas. As siddhas, we're going to use this energy like Hanuman. But if we're not yet siddhas, if we're still sadhakas, so we want to use this energy in service. So that means to some extent we're what Prabhupada would call dovetailing. You all know what a dovetail is? Like in carpentry, instead of just putting the two pieces together like this, you put them together. My fingers won't do that. There's gaps. But you put it together so there's no gaps, and then it's very strong. So we're dovetailing this energy. Yes, it's an energy of rebellion. It's a Ravana's energy. But we're dovetailing it either as responsible renunciates in the mission or as responsible grahastas in the mission. And using it like that. And as we do that and simultaneously perform the 9 processes of bhakti, gradually that energy gets transformed back into its original form. So we don't need to dovetail anything anymore. Gradually we all become like Hanuman, who have the Lord and his potency in our heart. And we're experiencing that energy on the spiritual level from within. We don't need to use something polluted in service anymore because there's nothing polluted. I find it interesting here that Prabhupada notes that one of the reasons that these lifetime renunciates are mentioned is to note why they didn't have any biological descendants. But I thought they had many descendants in terms of disciples. Like Narada's disciples are all over the Bhāgavatam. So they're also enlarging the family in that way. Yes? So this is not an energy that we can kill or repress. My dear friends, we have had much grief and suffering and embarrassment and legal problems in our International Society for Krishna Consciousness by people thinking that they could do what Vishwamrita and Sobri Muni could not do, and thinking that they could kill what cannot be killed. So rather to recognize that this energy originates in the Supreme, that while we're dealing with our Ravana tendencies, to use them dharmically somehow as a renunciator, as a grahasta, and gradually become internally like Hanuman. At which point we no longer need to have a material body. And we can actually be situated in our original spiritual body, having done service for the Lord in the world, increasing the descendants through biological children who are valuable, upright members of society, or through preaching Krishna consciousness to society in general. So, questions, comments, additions, subtractions, chastisements? Yes, Janmashtami Prabhu.
Some devotees don't experience so much taste when they do their service or when they're chanting. Others, as they progress, they experience more and more. So how does that connect, not experiencing that pleasure and potency? How do we explain that when we don't experience it? How is that connected with the points that you're making in the class about a misuse?
Well, of course, we want to experience that taste, but that experience is not entirely under our control. That taste is coming from a relationship with the Lord. And as very nicely explained in Bhāgavatam 10:32, when Krishna is explaining to the gopis why he sometimes removes himself, he says sometimes for the sadhaka he appears to be absent so that this longing will increase and this humility will increase. The famous Christian writer C.S. Lewis talks about how that the prayers that we offer when we're feeling dry are actually more potent if we look around and we see where is the Lord, but we still obey, even though we're not feeling his presence at that time. But if we're experiencing dryness for a prolonged period of time, then according to the Bhāgavatam, that is due to offenses. It can also be due to a few other things. So one of the main causes is offenses, and especially offenses against devotees. I mean, Madhvacharya said if we offend devotees, the Lord will actually put obstacles in our path. Because he doesn't want us in the spiritual world where it's all devotees. We'll just be causing a problem. Another reason that may not be offenses is we may be mixing bhakti. We may be doing karma mishra bhakti, or gyan mishra bhakti, or yoga mishra bhakti, and so the taste goes down and our progress is slower and impeded. So that does happen. And we also I see that sometimes in our Hare Krishna movement, where we're preaching karma mishra bhakti or gyan mishra bhakti. Another reason it can happen, interestingly enough, is if our external situation is really messed up, our sadhana may be affected. So that's my understanding as to why Srila Prabhupada talked about varnashram so much. Why didn't he just talk about Krishna Prema? I mean, a lecture Prabhupada gave on Radhastami in London, he talks the whole time about varnashram, and at the end he says, and so today is the appearance day of Srimati Radharani, in the last 5 minutes. Because when people aren't situated properly, in terms of what Prabhupada calls our psychophysical nature, it's a lot harder to engage in our sadhana. It's a lot harder to have that connection with Krishna. So I give the example, if you say, okay, Prabhupada said we're all a cell in the universal body. So if I'm, a cell in the body, let's say I'm a heart muscle cell, and I say, I want to serve the body, but then instead of being in the heart, I'm in the lungs. I'm not going to be able to connect with the body properly. It just won't work. So if we're in the wrong ashram or the wrong varna, or we're all mixed up, or we're trying to straddle 2 ashrams at the same time, or which I see a lot, or trying to straddle 2 varnas at the same time, or everything's a complete mess, then it's more, bhakti is not dependent on anything material, but it makes it much harder. It's kind of like we're swimming upstream. Another interesting point is Prabhupada writes in the 16th chapter of Nectar Devotion that everyone should perform devotional service according to their personal taste. And so we have some set things for everybody as 16 rounds, but some people want to chant 40 rounds, and some people would rather be on the altar all day, and some people would be on a book distribution all day, and some people want to just study the scriptures. Some people like to just visit the holy places. So also Prabhupada said, one should do the activities of bhakti that are according to one's personal taste. So that's also another important component. So I'd say if to have some periods of dryness is the Lord coming and going. That's natural, especially for a sadhaka, and especially for someone who's not yet at nishta. It's just there. But if we're dry, we're ananda maya asat, we can't survive in dryness all the time. It won't work. We'll look for pressure somewhere. So if we're dry, we want to look at, am I offending devotees? Am I mixing my bhakti? Am I not doing the items of bhakti that I really enjoy? Right? And am I wrongly situated according to my psychophysical nature? I would look at all 4 of those things. Is that all right?
Pretty good. No, it's nice. One point that occurs to me is that in the services I've done over the years, when I identify something that the movement really needs, and I do service in that area, that's where I experience the highest taste. Even though, that made me neglecting some of the things that I'd like to do, but I do it, for the sake of the movement. The example I told you about this project I'm working on, it's been so difficult because it's not recognized by leadership.
Right, it's difficult because it's not recognized by leadership, but I don't think it's out of your psychophysical nature, Prabhu. I think it's directly related to your psychophysical nature.
I'm sorry?
It's that what you're talking about, for you developing courses, and teaching them, that's you. You're like a walking course developer and educational institute developer. Isn't that kind of who you are?
Well, yeah, but the thing is that, I've had to,
I mean, let me give you an example. I'll tell you something else the movement really needs, and you live in Mayapur. So in the public bathrooms in Mayapur, the little cups that are there by each of the toilets with water have probably been there for 5 or 10 years. They are covered with slime inside and out, and therefore anyone who uses them to wash their nether regions is courting infection. And there's very few places in the public areas in Mayapur where you can find a clean lota in a bathroom. So that's something the movement really needs. Does that inspire you?
not really.
Exactly. So we are all going to, you are being inspired by something the mission needs, but you're, at least what I know of you, you're inspired by your nature.
But see, what happened,
That doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
but the workload has been so heavy because I don't have a team. When I started the Mayapur Institute, I had a team.
Yeah, but that's a whole different
No, no,
thing,
no.
Prabhu.
But what happened is that I had to, in order to keep the project going, I had to neglect important sadhana practices.
Well, then that's, don't do that.
What's that?
Don't do that.
I did it,
Well, don't.
but, no, but the
Look, the
point-
person telling you not to do, look, I'll tell you who's telling you not to do that. It's not me. It's Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his commentary to verse 6 of Srimad Shiksha. That's, if one neglects one's sadhana's practices to do important service, that is a donkey urine bath. It's a donkey urine bath.
Oh.
Not me, don't shoot the messenger.
But what was the most amazing thing? I wasn't able to go to Bhāgavatam classes. I wasn't, because the workload was so intense. If I wanted to keep the project going, I wasn't able to regularly read, but the taste was unbelievable because it just seems like Krishna wants it so bad.
Well, Krishna's very kind. Even if we do something wrong, he may still reciprocate with us because he likes us, but it's still wrong. Sorry.
I agree, it's wrong.
I'm sorry.
I want to rectify it, so I got ways to, Krishna's finally said,
Good, I'm glad that you've rectified. But Krishna's very kind. I mean, there's that verse that he gives mercy even to Putana. So that's my hopeful verse. That's the verse that guides my life, that Krishna gave mercy to Putana. So even if I'm really a mess everywhere, then hopefully he'll give mercy to me. But if we're neglecting our sadhana, I mean, 1 day, 2 days, but if it's some long, drawn-out thing, then Raghunath Das Goswami and Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, don't do that. So you can argue with them about it if you like.
I was just praying for solutions to it, and now Krishna sent.
Well, I'm glad Krishna sent you solutions.
But he's, it was super heavy test for me.
All righty. Anybody else? Thank you. Yeah, in the back. And you can, I know you can dish it out, so I figure you can take it, right? I know you dish it out, so I figure you can take it. Yeah, I figure that,
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for the class. You said something very profound about chanting with this essence of a constitutional position of the jiva, like sambandha. Can you speak more about this essence of chanting with the intention of understanding your own constitutional position of Krishnendriya Priti Icha Tari Premanama, that you're supposed to give pleasure to Krishna's senses?
Yes.
Can you speak more about that? I think it's very important in our chanting.
Well, we have to have first sambandha. For the beginning devotee, the sambandha is very general. Jivara Swarapaya Krishna Nityadasa. I'm a soul, I'm part of Krishna, I'm Amaivanso Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. And as a soul, I'm supposed to give Krishna pleasure. And we might not feel that all the time. It's just, Vaidhi sadhana is you're just, Prabhupada said so, and I think he's pure devotee probably, and the Shastra says so, and I think the Shastra is correct. I have some faith, and maybe, and I'm going to try it out. So, and gradually as your faith increases, then you're working primarily on faith with some taste. With some taste. Srila Rupa Goswami says you can't start without some taste. You may not know what the taste is exactly. Like, why am I so happy chanting Hare? One time I was in Germany, and this American was traveling through Germany and just like decided to visit a Hare Krishna temple for the first time. And after about 4 days, he said, I want to try chanting. So he took some beads, went out into the woods. This is, I think it was in Simachalan. And he went out in the woods and chanted for a while, and he came back and he's like, that should be a controlled substance. You know, so even in the beginning there may be some taste. But mostly it's the idea of I'm just trying to serve Krishna. It's mostly theoretical, it's mostly philosophical, it's mostly based on faith, it's mostly based on conviction. But there are some indications that there's something going on that's not ordinary. You know, our happiness in kirtan is not just because of expert musical arrangements. I've no doubt that you can find more expert musicians, you know, at the Philharmonic, and but it's something that's transcending just the material senses. But as we develop in Krishna consciousness, we should start to get an awareness of our particular relationship with Krishna. We start getting some inclination, how I want to love Krishna. And then how do I want to bring Krishna pleasure? And Prabhupada talks about how that this is not a material desire. He said, like the cowherd boys who are thinking they want to help take care of the cows for Krishna, that that's a spiritual desire. So when that naturally awakens, it can't be forced. You know, like you can't even force physical, biological maturation. You can't force spiritual maturation. But as it comes, then that should develop, and we should be hankering for that. You know, and Sri Rupa Goswami describes these lovely prayers on that platform. When will I be able to fan you? When will I be able to bring you sandalwood paste? And this enjoyment. And we're, of course, even beginning devotees, even first day in a Hare Krishna temple in Tulsi Puja, we're singing these prayers. Seva adhikara diye karanita dasi. Please give me the adhikar for my service. Please reveal my position in service to the divine couple. And so we should be asking for that. And the Hare Krishna mantra, whether in japa or in kirtan, is really acting on that platform. We may not always be aware of that while we're chanting. But that's actually what's happening. And the more we can be aware of that, the more we can think like that. And you might say, okay, but I can't do it constantly. And it's nice. Srila Rupa Goswami says one should always remember Krishna and never forget him. And Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in the commentary says that this instruction may be very discouraging for sadhakas because they're not able to do this. He said, so at least you have a certain time of the day for your sadhana, where at least at that time you're focused on, I'm really going to try to focus on remembering Krishna. And even then our mind may go in and out. You know, you're in the kirtan and you're just thinking about Radha Govinda and chanting the mantra, and then all of a sudden you think, I wonder what they're making for breakfast. You know, or, oh, I got to call somebody, or, you know, it's something. And what does Krishna say in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita? Wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, just withdraw it and bring it back to the self. Think of it like, you know, some little child, some little 1 or 2 year old child that, you know, you take them out to the park and they're everywhere. And then you just have to keep bringing them back. So the mind is like that. And it's compared to a wild animal, that it's always going to have that tendency. And at nishta, the mind becomes very easy to pull back. You still have to pull it back, but it becomes very easy. And usually at nishta is when one's specific relationship with Krishna starts to awaken. There's a beginning awakening. Prabhupada will say 50% of the anarthas are gone at that time. And then at ruchi is when one really has a taste. And then it becomes even easier to pull the mind back. At ashanti, you don't have to pull your mind back anymore. Even if someone tries to pull your mind away, it automatically goes back like a rubber band. You know, there's something going on about something apparently unrelated to Krishna, and immediately you just relate it to Krishna. So as sadhakas, we want to be practicing this. We want to be practicing this in our shastra reading, in our chanting, but we also want to be practicing it in our life. So I wrote this book with a devotee, Kamala Sita, called Krishna Meditations, How to Find Krishna, you know, in the taste of water, the light of the sun, in the trees, in our breath, in all the sounds, even the sirens. Krishna is the sound and ether. and somehow or other make an effort to make that connection. Is that all right? Is that helpful? Thank you very much. Anything good in this class is from Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas. Anything bad in this class was from me. Please take the good and ignore the bad. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.